Classify the sources of energy which originates from living things and non-living things. In this unit, you are going to learn about This family is having a barbecue. The father is setting up the barbecue pit. Look, what is he using for fuel? Do you know how the fuel is formed? What kind of fuel is used in these vehicles? Where does this fuel come from? Petrol, diesel, and natural gas originate from living things, so they are known as natural fuel resources. Other examples of natural fuel resources are coal and wood. Now, let's observe how coal is formed. Plants that grew millions of years ago store energy from sunlight. These plants die and decay. They form a layer called peat. Over hundreds of years, the peat layer is covered by sediment or mud and gets deeply buried. The decayed plants undergo chemical changes under high pressure and temperature. Slowly, the materials harden and turns into coal. Now, let's observe how petroleum and natural gas are formed. Petroleum and natural gas are formed from organisms that lived in the sea millions of years ago. When they die, their remains settle to the bottom of the sea where they are covered by sediment. High temperature and pressure changes the dead organisms into petroleum and natural gas. What fuel is the father using to light up this barbecue grill? He is using coal and some kerosene to light up the grill. Do you know where coal and kerosene come from? Kerosene comes from petroleum. Both coal and petroleum are natural fuel resources. They are formed from the remains of plants and organisms from millions of years ago. Use the clues given to find the words in this puzzle. Use the mouse to highlight the words. Press check. Complete the following sentences. Drag the choices below and drop them into the boxes given. That is correct. That is correct. That is correct. Which of the following are natural fuel resources? That is correct. Where can we find petroleum in Malaysia? That is. In this lesson, we learned that petrol and natural gas originate from living things, so they are known as natural fuel resources. Other examples of natural fuel resources are coal and wood. Coal is formed from decayed plants buried under layers of sediment and mud for millions of years. Petroleum is formed from the remains of organisms that were buried under layers of sediment for millions of years. Look, is the tower on fire? What is happening? Petroleum, which is mined from the ground, is a thick, black, sticky liquid. It is also known as crude oil. Petroleum is a mixture of hydrocarbons. It can be separated by fractional distillation. Observe how petroleum is distilled into its fractions. Click on the Set Up button and watch how the apparatus is set up. The following apparatus is set up. The distilling jar is filled with crude oil until it is about a quarter full. Small pieces of porcelain chips are added. The porcelain chips absorbs excess heat and prevent superheating and bumping. Now, use the Start button to observe the distillation process. Write your observations in your activity sheet. Now, let's compare the various fractions. What is the color of each fraction? The crude oil is heated to various temperature as shown in each of the columns. The various fractions produced have different colors. The first fraction is a clear liquid. The second fraction is pale yellow in color. The third fraction is yellow in color. The fourth fraction is light brown in color. Did you get the same result in your activity sheet? How thick is each fraction? Let us compare. The first fraction has low viscosity. The second fraction has moderate viscosity. The third fraction has slightly high viscosity. The fourth fraction has high viscosity. What happens when we burn the fractions in a crucible? Observe the color of the flames and the amount of soot given off. The first fraction burns with a blue flame with no soot. The second fraction burns with a yellow flame with little soot. The third fraction burns with an orange flame with moderate amount of soot. The fourth fraction burns with a red flame with a lot of soot. Did you get the same results in your activity sheet? From the activity carried out, what can you conclude? Discuss, then click Conclusion to compare your answer. The higher the boiling point of the fraction, the darker the color. The more viscous it becomes, the darker the color of the flame, the higher the amount of soot produced. What is happening? This is an oil refinery. A refinery separates and purifies crude oil into fractions through a process called fractional distillation. The chimney stack burns unwanted gas or fractions. Complete the sentences in this puzzle. Use the jumbled letters as clues and key in your answers. Press Check to compare your answers. The higher the boiling point of the fraction, the darker its color when burned. That is correct. The higher the boiling point of the fraction, the lighter the color of the fraction. That is. Fractional distillation involves boiling and condensation. That is correct. Which statements about petroleum are correct? That is correct. Petroleum is a fractional distillation of petroleum is the process of separating petroleum into various components called fractions by heating it at different temperatures. The higher the boiling point of the fraction, the darker its color. The more viscous the liquid, the darker the color of the flame when it is burned. The greater amount of soot produced when it is burned. Can you identify which objects are made from petroleum fractions? In an industrial oil refinery, fractional distillation is carried out in a large furnace heated at about 400 degrees Celsius. Click Start Refinery to observe what happens in a fractioning tower. Crude oil is heated to temperatures of 400 degrees Celsius. The mixture boils, forming vapor. The vapor rises through the fractional distillation column. When the vapor reaches a certain boiling point, it will condense to form a liquid fraction. The trays collect the various liquid fractions. The liquid fractions then go to storage tanks or go to other areas for further chemical processing. What are the uses of petroleum fractions? Petroleum gas is used as cooking gas. Petrol is used as car fuel. Naphtha is used to make synthetic materials such as plastic and PVC. Kerosene is used in jet aircrafts, lamps, and stoves. Diesel is used for trains and diesel engines. Lubricating oil is used for engine lubrication. Fuel oil is used to generate electricity and fuel for ships. Bitumen is used for paving roads. Which of these are made of petroleum? Shoe polish, plastic, cooking gas, bitumen for road, lubricating gel is made of petroleum. Can you match the petroleum uses to the correct level on the fractional column? Which of the following are products of an oil In this lesson, we learned that petroleum fractions are used to make cooking gas, fuel for vehicles, plastics, tar for roads, lubricants for engines, and polish. Look at these photos. What has changed Kirti Trunganu? Will this continue? Petroleum and gas industry contributes to Malaysia's economic development in many ways. Click on the photos and listen to the explanation. The industry creates jobs. more than 200,000 people are directly working in Malaysia's petroleum industry. It increases Malaysia's export income. The income is then used to build schools, hospitals, roads, and other infrastructures. It encourages petrochemical industries such as plastics, textile, and fertilizers. This adds to the number of domestic products that can also be exported. It helps to create better facilities in rural areas. In the case of Kerteh, Miri, and Bintulu, the petroleum industry has helped to increase the standard of living in these rural towns. In order to maintain economic and infrastructure growth, Malaysia will have to generate and consume a lot of energy. Analyze this chart. What type of energy resource do we consume most? Click Explain. Yes, Malaysia consumes energy mainly from fossil fuels such as petroleum, natural gas, and coal. And the trend shows a dramatic increase in consumption. But fossil fuels cannot be replenished or renewed. In order to conserve our natural fuel resources, how do we efficiently use energy? Which of these photos show practices that are energy efficient? Click on the photos that show efficient practices to reduce waste. So, how has Kerteh, Terengganu changed over the years? In the 70s, Kerteh was a quiet seaside village. But with the discovery of petroleum off its coast, Kerteh is now a busy center for the exports of petroleum products. Its economic and social standards have improved, with many job opportunities for locals and the surrounding area. However, this may all change when the petroleum resources of Terengganu depletes. Malaysia will lose a major source of export income, and many could lose their jobs. Therefore, we must learn to conserve our natural fuel resources and use energy wisely. Look! No one is around, and yet many things are left switched on. Can you help to conserve energy in this room? Click on an object to find out. Yes, conserve energy. Yes, change this bulb to a fluorescent bulb. It uses 75% less energy than normal bulbs. Great! Let's switch the TV off, since no one is watching it. Yes, reuse the back of printed papers for draft prints, and recycle the paper after that. Did you know that there is about 1 class? Look, no one is around, and yet many things find. The income from the export of petroleum and natural gas industry is That is correct. The discovery of petroleum and natural gas in Malaysia has not helped to improve. That is correct. Using fluorescent lamps are more energy efficient. That is correct. In this lesson, we learned that the petroleum and gas industry has helped Malaysia to create more jobs, increase Malaysia's export, encourage petrochemical industries such as plastics, textile and fertilizers, encourage transport industry, encourage better public facilities. There are many ways to efficiently use natural fuel resources. Among them are use public transport or carpool, recycle materials, conserving electricity, make use of solar and hydro energy, use energy-efficient things such as fluorescent lamps, solar heater, wind ventilators. Different hydrocarbons have different boiling points. Which of these? Click on one. Petrol, diesel, and natural gas originate from living things, so they are known as natural fuel resources. Other examples of natural fuel resources are coal and wood. How are coal and petroleum formed? Click on coal or petroleum. Plants that grew millions of years ago store energy from sunlight. These plants die and decay. They form a layer called peat. Over hundreds of years, the peat layer is covered by sediment or mud and gets deeply buried. The decayed plants undergo chemical changes under high pressure and temperature. Slowly, the materials harden and turns into coal. Petroleum and natural gas are formed from organisms that lived in the sea millions of years ago. When they die, their remains settle to the bottom of the sea where they are covered by sediment. High temperature and pressure changes the dead organisms into petroleum and natural gas. Fractional distillation is the process of separating hydrocarbons into various components called fractions. The process involves boiling and condensation. What are the characteristics of the various fractions from the distillation of petroleum? The higher the boiling point of the fraction, the darker the color, the more viscous it becomes. The darker the color of the flame, the higher the amount of soot produced. What are the uses of petroleum fractions? Bitumen is used for paving roads. Fuel oil is used to generate electricity and fuel for ships. Lubricating oil is used for engine lubrication. Diesel is used for trains and diesel engines. Kerosene is used in jet aircrafts, lamps, and stoves. Naphtha is used to make synthetic materials such as plastic and PVC. Petrol is used as car fuel. Petroleum gas is used as cooking gas. Petroleum and gas industry contributes to Malaysia's economic development in many ways. The industry creates jobs. More than 200,000 people are directly working in Malaysia's petroleum industry. It increases Malaysia's export income. The income is used to build schools, hospitals, roads, and other infrastructures. It encourages petrochemical industries such as plastics, textile, and fertilizers. It encourages transport industry. Since petroleum refineries are located in remote places, roads and transportation system are improved in order to move supplies and goods. It helps to create better facilities in rural areas. In the case of Kerteh, Miri, and Bintulu, the petroleum industry has helped to increase the standard of living in these rural towns. There are many ways to use natural fuel resources efficiently and conserve energy. This includes carpooling instead of driving alone, replanting trees, recycling plastic containers, switching off lights when not in use. The petroleum and gas industry in Malaysia has created more jobs for Malaysians. List out possible jobs in the petroleum and gas industry. One day, our petroleum resources will be depleted. Find out what can be done to overcome this problem. Research on what technologies currently exist or in the future that will help solve this problem.